Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric, and after visiting every Six Flags park except Mexico, Great America is still the one that I think is the best of them all. So here's a full review of Six Flags Great America, talking about what makes it so great, and how you can have a fantastic experience by going here. Before we begin this full review, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. In return, you will receive plenty of rankings and reviews and other theme park content, both serious and funny. For this review, I will be going into great detail about my experience, and I will be talking about how you can have a great time here, giving sort of mini reviews of everything about it, and concluding by talking about why I think this is the best Six Flags park. Let's start with the entrance experience. Driving up to the park, I was immediately drawn to the skyline. I feel this is probably the best skyline of any Six Flags park. You have beautiful roller coasters with popping colors and such an abundance of great looking ones. I say this beats Great Adventure, Magic Mountain, and all of the others. At the actual entrance plaza, as with many other Six Flags parks, there is a line for season pass holders. A Diamond Elite member at the front of the line told every Gold member that Gold members were not allowed there. Only Diamond Elite is what he told us. We were Gold members, so we left the line on the off chance he was correct. It turned out he was incorrect. So if you have a Gold pass, you can go in that line. Maybe you'll encounter that same guy and he'll tell you the same thing. But I'll just stay there if I were you. So the first ride we went to was Maxx Force. I was under the impression this would be the best one to go to first. And unfortunately, the ride did not open with the park. It broke down, and I actually got to hear about a rollback on it, which was interesting. I did not record that, sadly, but a rollback is interesting. And it did end up opening later, and I'll get to that. Because Maxx Force was closed, we went to Whizzer. Whizzer was also closed for a tree branch being on the track. This was a very poor start, and I was very concerned for the day I was about to have. But the first ride we went on was Viper. And Viper was definitely a good wooden coaster. I feel that this one is surprisingly long. It feels like possibly the longest wooden coaster I've been on, and that's the American Eagle in the same park. The ride is excellent. You have fantastic airtime, a great sense of speed, and a solid layout. They're not the most original from my understanding, and I just feel it's a very strong wooden coaster. It is pretty comparable in quality to Apocalypse the ride at Magic Mountain. I might prefer that one a little more, but this is still a fantastic roller coaster. After that, Maxx Force opened. Ran back to it, probably has an hour line at this point. So we are very upset that we left that line. That was a dumb choice on my part. But it turns out there is a single rider line at Maxx Force, which I was aware of but had totally forgotten about once I entered the park. And here is a tip for anyone going. If you are okay with potentially being separated from your group, or if you don't have a group at all, do the single rider lines on Maxx Force, Goliath, and maybe Joker. Especially on Maxx Force and Goliath, they can save quite a bit of time. They'll allow for re-rides, and they're pretty good. They're actually just as, if not more effective, than the Flash Pass line. So those are very helpful for sure. Just don't share this secret with everyone, okay? So Maxx Force was a very strong ride. I feel that the thing that stands out about it for me is not necessarily the launch, but actually the inline twist. I think the launch outside of the front row is not all that powerful, but that one inversion is surprisingly forceful, and it's among my favorite inversions ever, I would say. The really large, quirky inversions that are before and after it are not quite as good, and I feel this ride is definitely not a standout number one in the park. In fact, I don't even have it as top 3 in the park. It's still a great ride, but it's just not quite up there like some have said. And for me personally, it would not be a top priority if I went back to the park. After this, we entered that western area where you can find Viper, and this is where Raging Bull is. By the way, props to the very solid theming in this area. They have a really nice building aesthetic that's kind of similar to El Toro's, and I think it worked well with Raging Bull. So Raging Bull on this particular day was running one train. The operations were very good, but unfortunately with how long a ride cycle this gives, one train just was not moving the line very well. So we did wait probably 20 minutes, and this is very early on in the day. So I think most days you'll probably have more trains, but the guy who was working the ride, one of them anyway, even said sorry for being Michigan's adventure today. And that is a good point to make. The staff. I feel this staff is among my favorites of any theme park I've been to. The people, some of them are roller coaster enthusiasts, others are not, but no matter what, they are going to be very efficient and very helpful. And even in line for Raging Bull, I was never that bored because both times I went on it, I made friends with the people I was going to be in the back row with, and I must say, that was a very fun experience. I sometimes get into conversations with people at parks. In fact, when I was at Great Adventure a couple days before, I was talking to a guy named Bob who had been on probably 800 roller coasters, he said. And that was cool. But I felt Great Adventure had a certain sense of community that no other Six Flags park, and very few other theme parks or amusement parks, have. I just enjoyed talking to people, they were all friendly, and it was just a very nice thing that kind of livened up the atmosphere of the park. So Raging Bull itself is my favorite ride in this park. I don't think it is technically an elite roller coaster, but it is very close to top 20 for me still. I just feel it's among the strongest B&M hypers. Not quite up there with Mako or Goliath, but right behind those. So the biggest weakness with this ride is that if you are going for intense forces and a great sense of speed, like the kind of thing you get on Sky Rush, this is not quite that hyper. It is more like Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. A long ride experience with some good forces, excellent moments, and a wonderful experience that makes for an overall fantastic roller coaster. Now, I do prefer Superman the Ride because I do feel it has stronger airtime, and airtime is something I love. But with Raging Bull being such a long, fun, adventurous experience, I had almost as fun as that, even though there are really only 2 or 3 moments that give very strong airtime. So even though the ride is not the thing I like most in the ride, it is the thing I like second most, and that is length. I enjoy a long ride if it gives a lot of great moments. And this one really proves that roller coasters are all about fun, and it's the roller coaster I had the most fun with at Six Flags Great America. So the next ride we went to was Justice League Battle for Metropolis. I was with my younger brother, so we had to do that at some point. It was fine. My gun was a bit busted, but it's fine. Those rides are fun, but not anything too spectacular as far as shooting rides go. But the next major ride we went to was X-Flight. And X-Flight is definitely among my favorite roller coasters in the park. I think B&M wing coasters are underrated as a whole, and this one is near perfect. I feel that it is incredibly forceful, and every inversion is top-notch, especially the inline twist through the near-miss elements. Not just for those elements, but because of how much hang time you get. This ride is graceful and powerful, and very reminiscent of what makes Tatsu an elite roller coaster. Now, I will say, there is one flaw, and that is especially on the outside seats near the back, you might get a bit of bumpiness in that final helix. And that's the only part of the ride I don't think is fantastic. But when the rest of it is, this is definitely a top tier roller coaster. I do still prefer Gatekeeper, and I don't think this is technically a perfect ride, but it's one I just enjoyed a lot, and it's definitely a top 3 for me in the park. So following this, we go over to American Eagle, and this is a hard ride to get to because it's a good 5 to 10 minute walk to get from the entrance sign to the loading station. Fortunately, I guess that deters a few people because no one ever rides this thing. And when I went, I'm not sure this will be a permanent thing, it is not racing. So we were just on the blue side, and that's all we did. But this is still a phenomenal roller coaster. I love the airtime moments early on. It has a phenomenal sense of speed, especially for a wooden coaster. And most of the ride is stellar. The only thing I did not like about the ride was the helix. I felt like it was a bit janky, and just didn't do a whole lot for me personally. But this is a long, fun ride experience that I put right around where Viper is, maybe a little better. And following this, we went to the ride I was most excited for that day, Goliath. Single rider line came in handy, and this is an anomaly of a wooden roller coaster for me because, as far as RMCs go, it has some of the best moments of any RMC roller coaster. The dive loop and stall are some of the best inversions, and outside of the death roll on Iron Gwazi, I would say the best inversions of any RMC. The first drop, as usual on RMC, is phenomenal, and you have some fantastic stuff in between those moments. There's even one really good airtime hill. Unfortunately, I have named pretty much every element of the ride, so this one does have the shortcoming of being short. It just doesn't have as much to it as some of the other RMCs, and I feel that means it's not quite as good because I enjoy a mix of quantity and quality. And this one has the quality, but not as much the quantity. Now, the other thing is that this ride can actually be pretty rough. When I was in the back row, I found at the bottom of the first hill especially, it was really janky. But this is a top tier roller coaster, and it's just behind Raging Bull for me because I had so much fun with Raging Bull. So Goliath is great, and we head over toward that DC area. And here you get a beautiful view of pretty much the entire park. And that's something I want to point out. From nearly anywhere in this park, you can see at least 3 or 4 major roller coasters. And because of how beautiful all of them look, I love that. This one particular area gives views of X-Flight, American Eagle, Raging Bull, Maxx Force, and Viper. And even Batman the Ride, because you're right next to that. And with how stunning all of these look, that's a standout thing here. Because of how pretty they make all these roller coasters and how well kept this park is, compared to every other Six Flags park pretty much especially, the park looks so clean and well done. And when you have the appearances of Goliath, Raging Bull, X-Flight, American Eagle, every steel and wooden roller coaster here has great colors and a great appearance, and it stands out amongst other Six Flags parks. There are others with very good looking rides. I think the King de Kai El Toro area is a standout in Six Flags. But overall, the roller coaster lineup just looks beautiful at Great America. So walking around, I was taking in all the sights, and had just as much fun as when I was not riding anything. So the next ride we went on was Flash Vertical Velocity. And after Wicked Twister closed, rest in peace, I was very happy to ride this. I do prefer Wicked Twister a bit, as this one bumped my ear pretty hard at one point, and I do prefer going spiraling backwards rather than straight. That said, this is still a great roller coaster, with strong launches and fun forwards and backwards moments. I do wish a holding brake was still working, as that would add so much to it and make it arguably the best of impulse coasters, but it is still a great underrated ride. And next we go over to Batman the Ride. The original Batman is like a piece of history. The first inverted coaster, that meant a lot. At this point, I had probably been on nearly every Batman the Ride clone. There were 3, I think, in the world I had not been on. But this is still one of the best. It stands out for its terrain usage. It is also probably the smoothest of them all, as crazy as that sounds given that's the oldest, but I had so much fun with it. They keep the paint job really nice in this one. Going through the terrain, going so close to hitting things at your feet, added a lot to each element, and I find Batman the Ride clones underrated as a whole, and the fact that they're clones does not detract from how good they are, so I love these rides, and this is one of the best Batman the Ride clones out there. Joker was the next ride we did, and this is definitely a free spin. It is not a great free spin, it is not a terrible free spin, it is a good free spin like any of them would be. My ride was not a standout one, but I do still enjoy these rides. At their best, they are actually really strong rides that could compete with something like V2, but as it stands, I would put this one below V2 overall. Next up, we went to Superman Ultimate Flight, and the biggest issue with the appearance of this park is the fact that Superman Ultimate Flight and the Dark Knight coaster are in the Mardi Gras section. I kind of get why, because they didn't want a huge DC area, but I still kind of wish they did that. So Superman. This is an underrated flying coaster. I am kind of a sucker for the B&M Flyer model, and I find all the Superman rides good. This one is just as intense and gives a great flying sensation like the others, and I feel that even though it does not use the terrain the same way Over George's does, I have a lot of fun with this great mix of intense and graceful moments. The standout moment on this ride, though, was after the pretzel loop, because I watched a phone fall all the way to the ground and shatter into 5 massive pieces, and probably many other tiny microscopic ones. That was an unforgettable experience on a ride, and on that note, the loose article policy here is good. They have places to put your stuff on plenty of the rides, pretty much all of them. And they kind of separate bins the way Cedar Point does, so they handle loose articles really well. If you take your phone on the ride with you with nothing keeping it secure, yeah, that might not end well, but for everyone else, it's a great system. So the next ride we did was the Dark Knight Coaster. And this one, when I heard the truck honking when I was in the queue, I got so excited to ride this. For those who do not know, this has a clone at Six Flags Great Adventure. And one of my favorite parts of this ride is the terrifying truck that just pops out of nowhere near the end. And they don't do that anymore. I'm assuming there were too many complaints at Great Adventure, but at Great America, they do it. Every effect was working on this one, which is very different from Great Adventure. It was a bit jankier though. I still enjoy this Wild Mouse. I consider the Dark Knight Coaster one of the best Wild Mouse coasters out there. But this one is slightly better overall than the Great Adventure one for the good theming elements that are working. So at this point, we are at the front of the park again, and we decide to ride the carousel. And while it looks beautiful at the front of the park, this is the worst carousel by far. It is the slowest, the horse designs are nothing special, and the ride is weirdly bumpy. I didn't think I'd ever say that for a carousel, but that was the case. So only if you have young kids should you ride this. Out to the young kid, my brother, but even he didn't like it that much. But we went on Whizzer afterwards. And this is a very fun, unique family coaster. The seating arrangement is so much fun, and I think there are some pretty fast, intense moments in this one. It's very quirky and honestly quite reminiscent of Aero Mine Trains in its use of terrain, along with the fact that there are multiple lift hills. I don't think this is as good as some Aero Mine Trains, but it is better than quite a few. And it is definitely my favorite family coaster in the park. And Demon was the next ride we went to, and this was the final major roller coaster. Demon was not great. I do like the appearance of it. The way they do the rock work, and that skeleton tunnel, and some of the glowing tunnels, it's all really fun. But the ride itself has some of my least favorite corkscrews of any roller coaster. But like pretty much every other Aero looper, the vertical loops are certainly passable, and there is some enjoyability to the ride. And it's decent, but it's not something I really want to go on again. The other ride we went on was their drop tower. I apologize for not knowing the name of the drop tower off the top of my head, and I probably should because it is one of my favorites. If you sit facing the rest of the park, you'll be rewarded with one of the best views from any drop tower I've ever done. You see pretty much every roller coaster, and it is quite beautiful because, as I mentioned earlier, this park's appearance is pretty much impossible to beat. And the drop itself gives crazy airtime and is far more stomach dropping than even other Intamin drop towers have done. So that was good. The following things we did were Sprocket Rockets and Little Dipper. These are essentially the kiddie coasters of the park, but they are larger than the average kiddie coaster. The main reason I rode those was not only because I had a younger brother who wanted to do them, but also because I knew I would be ranking every roller coaster at Great America, and I knew I wanted to have been on everything to properly rank them. Now the thing with these two is, they are larger than your average family coaster. As far as kiddie coasters go, they do feel like pretty decent sizes. Little Dipper is a fun wooden coaster, but you're never going to believe this. It is my least favorite of the wooden coasters in the park. But no, it's still fun, and they are good rides for families and kids for sure. So after officially riding every roller coaster in the park, we did re-rides on X-Flight, Raging Bull, Goliath, and Maxx Force. This was overall a very fun day at the park. Being able to get on every roller coaster was great, though I do feel the park was not as crowded as usual, so if you go on a crowded day, here's my advice. If you use single rider lines, you should go to Superman Ultimate Flight first, as that had consistently the longest line besides Maxx Force and Goliath. 45 minutes to an hour pretty much the whole day. So if you get on that early, you will not have to worry later on. Then I would go clockwise around, hitting things in the DC area, and because Raging Bull and X-Flight had really strong operations, and I feel X-Flight was pretty much always 10 minutes or less, those are less of a priority. Also, using the single rider lines on Goliath and Maxx Force is important. If you do not want to use single rider lines, you should hit Maxx Force and then go in that same clockwise order. So, regarding the park operations, I do want to go a little more into that. So I mentioned that dispatches were good, but they were just incredibly strong. I think the Batman the Ride team was unbelievably fast. Like, I'm not sure those people were human because of how fast they were getting trains out. They were running a lot of trains on most things. Even with Raging Bull, not all that good because there's only one train. The dispatches were pretty much always 30 seconds. So clearly the people here care, has a good sense of community with those people, and they clearly want to make sure everyone has a great time, not waiting in lines as much as enjoying the rides. Another good thing about this park I didn't point out yet was the layout. This is easily the best layout of any Six Flags park. It is a loop, but it is not huge and easily manageable, and finding your way from ride to ride is incredibly easy. The only things I could possibly see you being somewhat frustrated with are how the kiddie area is a little bit kind of cut off from the rest of the park, and the fact that you don't go exactly on the loop to get to Raging Bull, but rather you have to kind of walk into a different western area. But honestly, that wasn't a huge deal for me. So overall, I love Six Flags Great America. Maybe it was just the day I had and it was super lucky, but I had so much fun here, and this is my favorite Six Flags park. I feel that its quantity of great rides easily beats Great Adventure, Magic Mountain, and thus every other Six Flags park I've been to. When you have Raging Bull, X-Flight, Maxx Force, Goliath, Batman the Ride, Superman Ultimate Flight, Vertical Velocity, Viper, American Eagle, it is a pretty hard lineup to beat. So many great ones. So even if the top 4 here were closed, I feel you could still have a great time here riding roller coasters. Whereas a park such as Magic Mountain, without the top 4, you're not left with quite as much. The same could even be said for Cedar Point. I would say the supporting lineup is pretty comparable to that in quality. I feel they don't have a ton of flat rides here, and they don't have a standout elite roller coaster like plenty of other Six Flags parks, a lot of lesser ones in fact. But I don't mind too much because they have so many great rides here that even without a bunch of flat rides, you'll still have a great time riding roller coasters here. And the other important thing to note is that I feel this is the best kept of the Six Flags parks. The only other contender is Fiesta Texas for its great queues, but this park just has great paint jobs on everything. It's so clean, every staff member cares, and people working at the park and running the park, kudos to you. You're doing a fantastic job, and it's so great to hear how many people have this as their home park and enjoy going here, as I feel pretty much over any other park I've ever been to. I would say over every Six Flags park and over most Cedar Fair parks. I would go back to Great America before any of them. It's that good. Thank you for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's quite a long one, but I did really want to go over my whole experience and talk about some tips along with just how much I love this park, because it deserves a lot more credit. I'd say it's one of the most underrated parks out there. Subscribe to the channel for more theme park content and like this video if you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.